if your presentation is smart and consistent, the audience is much more likely to basically ignore the design and focus on the content. Hi, my name's Hannibal. I'm Head of Operations at IG, and today we're going to be talking through our presentation cheat sheet. So sitting down to create slides for a new presentation can be daunting, especially if you're not a designer. Whether it's a really important pitch meeting or if it's just some internal meeting, it can still be pressure to show off your work in the best light and perhaps your whole company. To reduce the pressure on your presentation, preparation is key. When your slides do the heavy lifting for you, you can focus on actually presenting. With that in mind, we've compiled some of our all-time top tips to help you get ready for your presentation. Tip number one is to have one main message per slide, one key point that you're trying to get across. If you've got a long presentation and you want everybody to follow the story that you're telling or the information that you're trying to get across, it's really helpful not to try and have a single slide giving conflicting messages, two different messages. It's much easier to follow when each slide is making a single clear point, and then you can move on to the next one. A great way to make sure you're starting off in the right direction is to begin by writing out in broad strokes the single point that you're trying to make on each slide. If you write the slide titles as a sort of skeleton to the deck and read through them, they should be able to make sense and give a logical structure just by reading the titles themselves. Then the detail on the slides exists to support, explain, justify, flesh out those points. Tip number two is to try and keep text to a minimum and focus wherever possible on visuals. Especially if you're talking through a presentation, it can be quite distracting if people are also at the same time trying to read paragraphs of text. The alternative, of course, is when you're simply reading that text yourself, which I'm sure we've all sat through presentations like that, and it's never fun. Visuals can be a really great way to keep people engaged, to illustrate the points that you're making, which you can then talk to without having to actually spell out all of the detail in words on the slide itself. A general rule is that your slides should be more visual than text heavy. It makes the information much easier to digest. Tip number three is to ensure visual consistency. I'm sure everyone's comfortable with the idea that a deck should use the same branding throughout, try not to use lots of different fonts and colours, but this is about more than just keeping your logo in the same place and making sure you're using the right font, though of course that's very important. A presentation that uses lots of different styles can be distracting and unprofessional even, and that in itself can distract from the content. You've probably heard the saying, good design is invisible, and if your presentation is smart and consistent, the audience is much more likely to basically ignore the design and focus on the content. If you've got an important presentation coming up and you think you'd benefit from some support, we'd love to help. Get in touch with me directly via LinkedIn or send me an email.